Morning and welcome to Thoughts and Updates for this week. Here I am, just along the canal from where I live in Kirkintilloch, where I have got to. Which way does this go? That's it. Strathkelvin Railway Walk, in the sort of Trails and Tales part of Eastern Bartonshire's encouragement to get people out to walk. One of the reasons why I had started doing this was to explore the local area, not just here but also in the sort of Glasgow area, and get out a wee bit more on a walk, and I've been doing that more and more over the last few months, both during lockdown and just now, though I haven't been recording everything. So this is just along from where I did the piece on the art installation, which was based on the ventilation shafts in the foundry, and further along from the basin where there was the taking on, taking off of various materials, because that's the kind of walkway through the canal with various things in its path, and it's those things in its path that I'm going to concentrate on and report back from. And this is a kind of tributary, if you like, a little sidestep going from the canal itself down into the railway walk. Now, of course, like many parts of the United Kingdom, and indeed many parts of Scotland, we have former railway lines. I know that in my own hometown of Ayr, the Alloway railway line is something that people like to go a walk down, the old sort of scar on the landscape it could be caused, or just a reminder of industrial heritage. And here, this is quite interesting because the Monklands and Kirkintilloch railway was opened in 1826, and it's particularly notable because it's both a second and a second railway to be open in Scotland, after one from Kilmarnock to Troon. But in 1831 it became the very first steam railway, which was licensed to carry coal from Monklands to the Forth and Clyde Canal. Here there was the terminus, I believe, at the basin in South Bank, but also there was a Kirkintilloch station. The exact whereabouts of which I'm looking into, I found yesterday, thanks to my partner Lorna, where the foundry, the Lion Foundry, was. A very unusual place, and I'll come to that in another time. But here we are, the railway walk, and I'm just along from where the bridge is. That this is an aqueduct, and underneath the scar of the railway is obviously there, and there's steps at the other side of here, which I think are made out of railway sleepers. They certainly look that way. So that's all the history for this week. What is it? So this week, what I've been up to has been fascinating as always. Last weekend I was doing my talking boy stuff about Lomachenko's return and Gervonta Davis winning a minor world title. It's always difficult for non-boxing people to get their head around what's a minor and a major title, quite rightly so, because there shouldn't be such a thing, but the WBA has been at it for quite some time. Also last night, I'm still looking to find out how Delphine Persoon got on. She was the fighter who fought Katie Taylor not once but twice, fought her in New York. In my eyes, beat her, got the rematch over here, and got beaten again. And after the fight, Delphine Persoon has said that she accepted that she had beaten the second time, but thereafter came out saying, no, I should have won the second time as well. Not quite so sure, but she was up for an IBO belt last night. For Ringside Report, I'm finishing off a look back on the career of Stephen Swifty Smith, who has just retired, looking at the TV programme Between the Lines, which I loved, with Siobhan Redmond and Neil Dudgeon all that time ago, and also for Kailyard Politics this week, looking at what's been happening in the former British colony, Hong Kong. More of that later. A little bit of a hiatus from Scottish Football Supporters Association, taking a bit of a break, especially after England won 4-0 last night against Ukraine. And the reviews this week, I've actually got one in there from the Macbeths on the sits, and I've got a whole load of them sitting. I've watched Broad Tales, which I think is a fantastic animated series from the Mull Little Theatre, the smallest theatre in Scotland. So I've also been doing long-term stuff, been following 3 boxers, been following 3 football teams, and finishing off the Olympics in 1980 and the unfortunate crash of Polish airline where the Americans lost their boxing team. But what have I learnt this week? I've learnt this week that democracy is a fragile state. For those of us who've lived with democracy for all of our lives, it's not necessarily a problem or an issue. We understand that there are people who disagree with us. We go out every so often and there is a ballot, an opportunity to vote for local electors to put their cross or a number in a box to give us councillors, to elect members of a Scottish or a Welsh or a Northern Ireland Assembly, to elect people to Westminster. Increasingly, democracy is in England giving you mayors, giving you commissioners of the police. We don't have that up here, but I don't necessarily think it's going to take long before that occurs and that happens. How we do democracy is really quite important. We had a referendum not so long ago about whether or not we wanted first past the post or we wanted to move to a more pluralistic and indeed fair system, and decided to stay with first past the post. That's all meat, drink, bread, water to Democrats. What has happened in Hong Kong is that we've taken a British colony steeped in the tradition of democracy and handed it back rightly, legally, to the Chinese government, who came to the table promising that there would be one country, 2 systems. That the thriving democracy in Hong Kong, the freedoms that they enjoyed, would be protected even under a communist state. Apple Daily, daily newspaper in Hong Kong, which has not had the type of stellar reputation and indeed the history of fairly august newspapers such as The Guardian and The Herald and so on, has just closed down. It's closed down because of the draconian laws that the Chinese government have brought in place, which has abolished de facto the idea of 2 systems, 1 country. A lot of dissidents, opponents to communism within Hong Kong have been arrested. And China is a superpower. What do we do? How do we address that? Do we stop buying Chinese goods? Do we put sanctions in place? Do we have an international outcry? Do we campaign? What do we do? The question in China has always been that the type of government that has been necessary to ensure that it has some kind of order has always been seen as necessarily authoritarian. Without that authoritarianism, they would be unable to control their economy and unable to be as successful as they are. The cost: crackdowns in Tibet, Muslims put in re-education schools, and now what is happening in Hong Kong. The international community depends upon China for so much. Hong Kong depends upon the international community for more than just an outcry. Do we stop short of bombing Beijing because we have got our heads round the need to fight this form of authoritarianism? No. But there are plenty of things that we can do. And what are we deafened by? Seems to be silence, because of the power of a powerful country who is able to ride roughshod over the wishes and desires and the democratic principles of those who have lived under British rule for so long. And my slip of the tongue calling Beijing Peking is indicative of how difficult it is, because Beijing was only called Peking when it was under British rule, when it was colonised, when it was under our yoke, and we did not behave well. So it's a legacy. It's a legacy of our quite right guilt over the way we behave, but it should not stop us from doing the right thing now. So Whilst Apple Daily has closed down, its founder is in prison. There are dissidents fleeing Hong Kong trying to get to the United Kingdom. But there are many, many thousands of people left behind who bought into the idea of democracy and now feel abandoned for one simple reason. They are. And our approach to how we deal with that has to change. So, till the next time, somewhere else on the trails as I go out for my walk. Bye for now.